Ciao studenti! Today I'm going to show you how to say I'm from in Italian correctly. Now, this sounds simple, but many beginners and even intermediate students end up saying this the wrong way. Now, many students want to introduce themselves in Italian, and they want to say where they're from. So, for example, they may want to say I'm from New York or I'm from Canada. So they say io sono da New York, literally. Io sono da Canada. But unfortunately, those are both not correct. And here's why this happens. In English, you always use the same structure. I am from the place. So the formula is always the same. You use the verb to be, you use the preposition from, and then you use you say the place. And whether the place is a city or a country, it doesn't matter. It's always the same. It does not change. But in Italian, we actually use two different verbs for this. The first verb that we use is the verb essere, so the verb to be, which is the one that you would expect. Oops. But we also use another verb, depending on the situation we're displaying in a moment, which is the verb venire, which is to come. So this is the first difference. The first difference that in English you always use to be. In Italian, you can use both essere and venire. And you need to know when to use one or the other. And also, and that's where the difficult part, the more difficult part happens, is that they take two different prepositions. So if you use essere, you will need to use the preposition di. If you use venire, you will need to use the preposition da. In English, it's always the same. In Italian, it's already very different. And also, essere di and venire da cannot be used interchangeably in most cases. So here's the point. When do we use one or the other? When do we use essere di and when do we use venire da? And here's the simple rule that I want you to remember, because this is going to help you in a super simple way and actionable way. Use essere di with cities. So remember, essere di più città. And use venire da with countries. So venire da più paese. That's your formula. That's the formula you want to remember. And you will always be right if you do this. Also, another important point that I want to highlight. When using venire da, so you're talking about countries, you want to remember that we also need to add the definite article. So I'm talking about the, or in Italian, il, lo, la, etc. So when you use venire da, you need to add an intermediate step, and another little piece of information, which is articolo determinativo. So when you use essere di plus the city, that's all, it's complete. But when you use venire da, which is when you talk about country, you also need to put something in the middle, which is the articolo determinativo. And what happens, and this is something that confuses a lot of students, is that the preposition da and the articolo determinativo, which is Italian for the, they kind of get together in one word. They create a new word that's called articulated preposition, preposizione articolata. Now, up to this point, it's been a little bit theoretical, so now let me show you how to do this in real life with some examples. So let's suppose we want to say, I am from New York. We just learned, let's review the rule. Essere di plus più città. So if you say I'm from New York, we're talking about city, so you need to use essere di. So you will conjugate essere, and that will be, so if you want to say I'm from New York, that will be, let's take more space here. Sono di New York. Because New York is a city, so sono di plus city. Sono di New York. Perfetto. If you're from another city, for example, I'm from London. sono di Londra. Perfetto. So remember, I am from plus city, sono di città. Anzi, sono di città. Perfetto. Now, what about if you want to say, I'm from Canada? Okay, this is a country, so we cannot use sono di. Sono di is only for cities, so we need to use the verb venire. So you will probably want to say, if you remember this, you don't say sono di Canada, that doesn't work. You say vengo da Canada. And that's already one step toward the right form because you're using vengo da. Bravissimo. But as I told you before, we need to also add the definite article. So it's like in English, in Italian, we say, I come from the Canada. I don't know, it's a little bit, or killing probably sounds like that in English, but in Italian, that's how we say. So we need the article. I come from the Canada. So that would be vengo da il Canada. And then something magic happens, which is that da and il get together and they form one new word, which is dal. So the whole sentence becomes vengo dal Canada. If you have seen this before and it kind of confused you, that's where that dal or dalla, etc. come from. It's the union of preposition plus an article. It's called preposizione articolata. Now let's see a few more examples like these. Let's suppose you want to say, I'm from the United States. Again, United States, country, so we need to use venire da plus the article. So I'm going to give you a moment so you can think about it. How would you say, I come from the United States? That is, vengo dagli Stati Uniti. Vengo dagli Stati Uniti. If you want to say you're from Finland, I'm from Finland, how would you say that? Vengo dalla Finlandia. Vengo dalla Finlandia. So, as you can see, we have vengo dal Canada, vengo dagli Stati Uniti, vengo dalla Finlandia. Da stays the same, but the article changes, resulting in a different preposizione articolata. Now, if you are confused about this combination of da plus article, first, it's totally normal to be confused. This is one of the trickiest aspects of Italian grammar. Second, please watch my dedicated video on articulated prepositions because I made one some time ago and I promise that will clear it once and for all for you. It will explain articulated prepositions, what they are, how they work, and that will be super simple for you from that moment on. So watch that video. The link will be in the description of this one as always. Now, getting back to this topic, have you ever been confused by these two forms, sono di and vengo da in Italian? Because many students like happen to see those and they are like, what's the difference? I hope now it's more clear, but I would love to know if you have noticed them before. And now that you know how they work, if you want, you can let me know where you are from, di dove sei, in the comments below this video. Now, back to the rule. I think the easiest way to remember this is to repeat it like a mantra. Il tuo nuovo mantra italiano. So remember, let's go back to it. Anzi, actually, let's type this with I am, so it's easier to remember. This is going to be your mantra. Whenever you want to say I am from, sono di più città, and vengo da più paese. Just remember to put that article between da and paese. So that's your mantra. Sono di più città, vengo da più paese. Hopefully this will help. And by the way, as always, I've taken care of preparing a dedicated PDF for this lesson for you. And inside the PDF, you will find a clear recap of this rule, plus many more examples with other countries and other cities from all around the world to help you pick the right one for you. You can download the PDF immediately. The link is in the description below this video, and as always, it's free. Now, something else that I want to share with you, because as you know, I believe grammar is essential and I want to make it as simple and as clear as possible for you. But I also make a point to tell you what we really use in real life in Italy, because sometimes these two things kind of differ. So in real life, we Italians often simply say our nationality instead of using sono di or vengo da when saying where we are from. So most of the times, if you want to say, for example, if I want to say I'm from Italy, I probably won't say I'm from Italy. I'll probably say sono italiana. It's the most natural way to say that. If you are American, you want to say I'm American, then you can simply say sono americano. If you are Finnish, you can simply say sono finlandese. And that's actually the form that I actually recommend most of the times, because that's the most natural, most organic way of saying where you're from in Italy. And that's why I tell you to use this form when you introduce yourself in Italian. Please watch my dedicated video on how to introduce yourself in Italian if you want to learn how to do this the most natural way in Italian. The link, again, will be in the description. So please remember, use sono di with cities only and vengo da with countries, or even more natural, just use your nationality when you want to say where you're from in Italian. È tutto per oggi. That's all for today. See you in the next video. Ci vediamo al prossimo video. Ciao da Valentina.